Welcome, my darlings. Make yourself comfortable, and I have a tale to tell you. If you enjoy it, please be sure to hit the like button, subscribe, and leave me a comment. I always enjoy your comments. Now, let us begin. Waltz of the Agonizing Ones, Part 2. That's not allowed, I'm afraid. Exceptions have always been made. Negotiations have been taking place since the dawn of civilization. We, too, have to make them as doctors, but you must listen to me, please. The nurse checked the stopwatch. Although her face was nonchalant, her eyes widened slightly as she acknowledged the measly amount of time the old man had left. "State your last wish," she said finally. "Whatever feeble life is left in me, whatever light still burns inside my living chest, transfer it to this dying body. Let him have another chance." "Dad, no!" Andrew cried, shaking his father by the shoulders. "You can't do this! You don't know what you're saying!" The professor could not bring himself to look at him, staring instead at the nurse through eyes welled with hot tears. "I'd like to make a confession," the professor said firmly as his son, Tanya, and Dr. Ellis watched silently, holding the limp body of Marcus. "I've lived long enough with a nasty little secret, and it's about time that I let it be known to my son." "What are you saying, Dad?" Andrew stepped back confused. "Look at my body. Look at the other's body. See any difference?" Professor smiled sadly. "The state of me is an absolute mess. This is because of my own sins. I must wash them away before I turn to the cosmos. Make your confession." The nurse stuffed the stopwatch away. The professor turned to Andrew and cupped his face, a tear running down his cheek. "I loved your mother very much. She was to me what the moon is to the sky. When you were born, she was elevated. She adored you endlessly, but there was love lacking in her life. I wasn't there for her. She was all alone, raising you while I hustled to earn money to be able to afford the life I wanted us to live. By the time I got there, she had dived into the harsh depths of loneliness. How much can a human mind bear? It was just her doing, chores all day long. I had failed to be there for her. As time passed, she fell deeper into the void she had entered. Ultimately, she broke down completely, and I was still in the illusion of my youth. Pride made me send her away, deeming her incapable of being with me and my son. She stayed at a psychiatric institution for many years, until your 16th birthday, actually, before finally passing away. She spent all those years alone, in utter confusion about what was happening, calling out my name and asking where her son was. I could not visit her more than twice. I used to tell myself I was too busy, but the truth was, my guilt slowly gnawed at me, eating me up from within like a festering wound. The truth is, the man lying on the bed is my truest face, my realest condition. I am nothing but a sad mass of flesh living in misery." Andrew stared at his dad in horror. His jaw hung down as he tried to process all the information he had just been told. But you told me she passed away in a car accident. You've been lying to me my entire life?" The professor looked down, clearly ashamed. "What are we if not a tangle of pathetic mistakes? Your time is up." The nurse appeared from the bed, interrupting the professor. "Stop! No! Don't do it, Dad! You're so selfish. You left Mom and now you want to leave me forever too? How can you be this cruel?" "You don't need me, son. All parents let go of their children's hands one day. For us, that day is today. I mean, look at me. I am a tragedy. Let me reunite with your mother so I can beg at her feet for forgiveness. My whole life, I have lived in guilt. Set me free. "I'll remove the intubation," Dr. Ellis called from the bed, holding the tube gingerly as it blew a measly quantity of air into the professor's lungs. It was a painful sight indeed. "Don't you dare do it, Ellis!" Andrew thundered, his voice edging dangerously. "Free me." The professor closed his eyes. Andrew scampered towards Dr. Ellis, yelling and threatening to hurt her if she unplugged the decomposing body lying helplessly on the bed. "Get away from that plug or I'll rip you apart! I don't care if you're my boss or whatever! This is not your decision to make!" "The decision has already been made, and I respect it. Goodbye, Professor. It's been a pleasure working with you. See you on the other side." Bidding him farewell, Dr. Ellis pulled out the tube and shut off the life support. Andrew let out a menacing scream as the life support machine died down. "You filthy sadist! I'm going to destroy you!" "Quiet," the professor's nurse yelled dominantly. She glared at Andrew for a second before slowly heading towards Marcus's bed, where the latter lay lifeless with his arms limp and his eyes turned back into his head. She fished out the professor's stopwatch from her pocket and handed it over to Marcus's nurse. "Quisque mortor milis," one said to the other, closing her eyes and pressing the stopwatch to her palm. "What the hell are you doing? What are you saying?" Andrew screamed, the corner of his mouth frothing up. His emotional situation seemed to be deteriorating rapidly, as he found it particularly difficult to accept everything his father had told him, only to die soon thereafter. "Stay put," the professor's nurse said, placing the body of the real professor along the decaying mass of flesh on the bed with the help of Dr. Ellis. "Your time will come too." As the nurse wheeled the professor out to be mixed with the stardust of the cosmos, Andrew sat down against the wall, thinking deeply about everything that had just happened. His eyes darted here and there, unable to accept the truth. He hated everything that happened. He resented his father for lying to him. He resented him for leaving so easily. But most of all, he hated Ellis. "Ah!" A voice echoed through the room. The limp body of Marcus weakly stirred around, struggling to get up. He was very much alive, very much breathing, all at the cost of the professor's life and his sins. A bout of nausea took over him for being dead for quite a few minutes, and the young man retched all over the floor, retching his guts out. "Marcus!" Tanya leapt to her feet, rubbing his back and helping him breathe properly. "Oh, goodness! He's breathing, Dr. Ellis!" "Put his face downward. Don't let anything aspirate into his lungs, Tanya." "You're okay, Marcus. You're okay. I'll get you water, okay? Just relax. Take a deep breath." Tanya turned Marcus onto his stomach and got up, rushing outside to get a bottle of water from the vending machine. Dr. Ellis scampered towards Marcus, cooing at him and whispering words of encouragement to the young doctor. Andrew Robertson watched his mentor and his best friend listen to each other as he sat alone in the corner of the room, his back against the wall. A seething anger was beginning to flame up somewhere deep inside him, and the embers had already rooted into his heart. He reminisced how easily Dr. Ellis had pulled the plug away without the slightest hesitation, as if his father was nothing but a mere disposable life, where in reality he was the one who had built the entire hospital. Without him, Dr. Ellis would be begging around the other hospitals at this age. After doing the heinous deed that she did, not a single apology came from her. No, nothing at all. As if Andrew didn't exist. Andrew got up, every single cell in his body loathing him for what he was about to do. Some hatred was too much to measure. Then the anger in him had developed for too long, too quietly. It could not be extinguished. He remembered his mother, his smiling mother, and his heart screamed silently at how she had endured so many years at a mental institution, waiting in desperation for someone to rescue her, All the while, her son, oblivious that his mother was alive, roamed around without a care in the world. All that pent-up anger seemed to be targeted at one person, Dr. Ellis. He couldn't get the image of her out of his head, the nonchalance with which she had carried out the deed. His father wasn't there anymore to get the hit of his anger. He had left him like a selfish person, unwilling to converse with his son about the sins he had done. He turned to the crash cart. The lowest drawer was filled with packaged and sterilized surgical equipment. In the heartlight of the ER, a brand new scalpel glinted provocatively at him, begging him to do the unthinkable. He picked it up and tore off the package. "Here, have some water," Tanya said, giving the bottle to Marcus. Dr. Ellis had her back turned on Andrew, oblivious about what was about to happen. "Hey, Doc," Andrew sneered ragingly, his face curled into a snarl. Dr. Ellis turned around and looked at Andrew, who glared down at her. How small and insignificant she looked. How ugly the glint of pride in her eyes was. Andrew imagined someone exactly like Dr. Ellis pinning his mother down when she must have acted out in her despair and confusion. "Andrew, what are you—" The blade worked faster than Dr. Ellis could finish her sentence. There was a sharp slick as beads of blood in a straight line appeared on Dr. Ellis's neck. As she moved her head, a stream of blood began to pour down, staining her scrub scarlet. "Andrew, what have you done?" Tanya screamed, pressing against Dr. Ellis's neck, trying to stop the bleeding. Marcus looked at the scene through bloodshot eyes in confusion, unable to understand what was going on. He finally put two and two together, looking at his best friend in shock and disgust. "Why?" he asked, looking at the boy he'd known since kindergarten, wondering when he'd died and this one had taken his place. Andrew was unrecognizable. "Dr. Ellis, Doc, please stay with me. I'm going to do something, okay?" Tanya got up and opened the cabinets in the ER, searching for stitches. What she didn't know was that Andrew had sliced deeply with the intention to kill. Her windpipe was cut cleanly in half, and no amount of stitches would fix that. The stopwatch held in the nurse's hand quickened up, speeding dangerously as the ticks blurred together. As they hit Tanya's ears, she hurried, searching for material faster, fooling herself with the reassurance she was trying hard, although a feeble little voice in her head told her Dr. Ellis was gone. "Andrew, don't do anything stupid now," Marcus croaked weakly. He half drug himself across the floor to where his best friend sat in despair, looking at what he'd done. A moment of clarity had passed through Andrew's mind. He looked at Dr. Ellis's betrayed eyes and stared at him with a mixture of fear and pain, not understanding how the saver of lives had turned into the taker of one. As Tanya opened the glass cabinets, Andrew looked at himself in the reflection. He was unrecognizable. His face was twisted into a wild snarl with angry eyes full of tears. His peers stared at him with disgust and horror on their faces. He was no longer Andrew Robertson. There was no going back now. Unable to live with his mind, Andrew dug the bloody scalpel deep into his wrist, letting the blood pour out. He gasped for a second, shocked, as the sight of so much blood poured out of his body, and hyperventilated soon after. Yet he knew he had to continue. Through his panic, he forced himself to slash the other arm as well, taking a deep breath and sitting back as he started to feel colder and lonelier, the world around him darkening and getting blurry, feeling his scrubs get wetter as the life poured out of his body. Tick-tock, tick-tock. Not one, but two stopwatches stopped ticking abruptly this time, leaving the ER in an eerie silence. Marcus's screams were fruitless as Andrew and Dr. Ellis lay on the floor, lifeless, eyes open, a look of despair on their faces. All was lost. Tanya and Marcus sat in the lobby soon thereafter, looking around the silent hospital. There was a trail of blood leading out of the ER as the remains of Dr. Ellis and Andrew were dragged across the lobby to the entrance by the nurses. It was an eerie sight indeed, yet even though the signs of violence that remained, Tanya felt a wave of calm wash over her. The cool air blowing out of the AC, the softness of Marcus's face, the presence of not another soul in the realm apart from them both. Tanya relished every bit of it. The slow sign of decay, however, was obvious. No world was permanent, and like all realities, this one was threatening to come to an end. Somewhere in the past hour, bits and pieces of the hospital, the glass planes, some sofas in the lobby, the vending machine, had all been vacuumed away into the breeze of the cosmos as it whipped past them. "Have you ever heard of the Noodle Man?" Marcus asked her, looking deep into her eyes as they sat at the entrance, watching the stardust and planets whiz past in the distance. "No," Tanya responded, a dazzling smile on her face. It was a smile that told him all would be good. "Well," he began, his doe eyes twinkling, "there was once a noodle man who sold noodles on the street of his village. He was really poor, but the highlight of his day was that one woman who bought his noodles every single morning. She smiled at him, told him his noodles were the best, then thanked him before leaving. Soon the noodle man started his own business and became quite rich, but his heart yearned for the sight of her once more. Wherever he went, he could not get the thought of her out of his head, so he returned back to his village to see her one more time. He started selling noodles again at the very same spot for many years, waiting for her to run into him again one day. He could finally tell her that he made it in life and that he loved her and that he had come back to get her so that they could be together forever. But, alas, it was too late. She was nowhere to be seen. Too many years had passed. He could not find her. The Noodle Man waited for her until he, too, disappeared from the world. Till his last day he searched for her. Till his last breath he remembered her face. It is said sometimes when the nights are really quiet, one can hear them laughing in the stars, sharing their love over a bowl of noodles. Tanya stared at Marcus, her heart hurting. They'd known each other for all of their residency years, yet none of them had the strength or time to tell their other their real feelings, thinking they'd do that when the time was right. Here they were now, sitting on the edge of the cosmos, at the end of time, looking at each other, speaking a million words through their eyes, all unsaid. "You should leave now," Marcus said, holding her hand close to his chest. "What? Why? This isn't over, Marcus. The test is still going on." Marcus chuckled lightly, noticing 1,000 freckles on her face. They were all beautiful. "Look around you, Tanya. Don't you get it? It's all over. This place is breaking and falling apart." "Yes, and that's great. In a short time, we'll both be leaving." Tanya pleaded in front of him, her heart brimming with love and confusion. "That's not how it works," Marcus said softly, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "There's only one winner. The ticking of only one stopwatch sets us free from this celestial prison." "Then let it be me," Tanya said defiantly, a tear streaking down her cheek. "I can't let you do this. Please." "No, it must be me. I must leave now. I can feel that my end is near. My clock is running out of all its talks." Marcus chuckled. Tanya looked at him angrily. "What about the stopwatch the professor gave you? Sacrificing his life in the process. You're just going to let that go to waste?" Marcus stared at the lovely little face in front of him, the little brow furrowed, the frown of desperation, the eyes that were filled with love for him. He hated himself for waiting till death, when he could have done this so much earlier in life. It hasn't gone to waste. In fact, I used them better than I used my own time in life. Professor let me have a little extra time with you. I will always be grateful to him for this. We don't have to do anything, Marcus. We can both just stay right here and see what happens. Whatever it is, we'll be in it together. No, Tanya, Marcus said, cupping his face. I want you to go and live a long and very colorful life. It should be rich and full of laughter. I want you to live it all. We both cannot go. This place will cease to exist when only one stopwatch remains. I've lived enough, seen enough. I come from a rich family. There's nothing I didn't experience. I want you to live it all too. Somewhere along the line, you will fall in love once more, and it will last you a lifetime. Tanya opened her mouth to reason with him. Shh, he said before she could utter a word. Never forget me. As the hospital slowly started to wither around them, Marcus let go of her hand, walking towards the entrance of the lobby, looking out at how beautiful the stars were. He hoped they would lead him to nowhere, to somewhere far away, where he could drift soullessly through the cosmos, unaware of his existence. Tanya watched him go from the lobby, her palms flat against the glass wall. She watched him face the curtain of stars whizzing past. Marcus stopped before he could step through, looking back one last time with the brightest smile on his face. I love you. As Tanya whispered the words back to him, Marcus stepped through the veil, letting the chaos embrace him fully as he surrendered himself to it. There was no blood, no violence, no regret. There was no anger or misery. There was only contentment. The minutes dragged by slowly as Tanya felt the breeze shift through her hair. She looked at the empty husk of this reality that lay around her, contemplating how surreal it felt. The empty rooms, the broken ceiling that showed the cosmos beyond, the trails of blood that spoke of misery and pain. They were all around her. A bout of slumber crept into her as the pieces of reality around her started to crumble away. Sleep, she told herself. Through her woozy vision, she saw her nurse approaching with a smile on her face, holding the stopwatch in her hands. The ticking of it echoed through the cosmos, deafeningly, putting Tanya into a sleep-like trance. Soon there was nothing but darkness. Wake up, Tanya. Wake up. Pain was all she felt. It was agonizing, wave-like, and burned right through her. She wanted to drift back to sleep, but her nerves screamed in terror, begging her to see what it was that was destroying her. Wake up, Tanya. A sound, a distant, feminine-sounding echo through her mind, coming from a faraway tunnel. She was awake. A sharp light blinded her as she squinted in pain. Every single pore of her body in discomfort. She could feel nothing but weakness. It was as if she had dried up. Mom? She croaked, the hair on her arms standing up at the sound of her own voice. Why was it so dead and raspy, like the croak of a frog? A lifeline, my darling. My everything. Her mom cried, looking at her daughter with love. You're awake. Finally. After 5 years, my Tanya is back. So close. This Raven. Darn you, scare in a box. You had me crying in this one. Just so you know. Anyway, I hope everyone enjoyed it and that you have a marvelous, marvelous day. What? You're still here after the whole story? I really appreciate that, darlings. Please hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't. And I always love to hear from you. Have a glorious day, my darlings.